I've covered a lot of different gaming mice on the channel, but today I wanted to talk about my top 5. These are ones that I'm really enjoying playing with currently, but also have had for a little while and keep coming back to. They're not in any particular order, as each mouse plays best in different types of games with varying playstyles. Starting off with the Superlight, this is an easy and obvious choice for a lot of people. It's probably one of the best mainstream mice that you can get your hands on. It's such an easy recommendation because it's so simple to get your hands on one. Pretty much anybody watching this can go run to a Best Buy and start playing with it today. I didn't actually used to like this mouse all that much, but I've been maining it for probably the last 2 or 3 months. The big issue I used to have was with these stock feet, as I found them too scratchy and slow for my liking, but I picked up these $13 replacement feet on Amazon and they've been a lifesaver. On top of the Zowie mousepad I'm rocking, they give me the perfect amount of control and speed. The symmetrical shape is a safe option for almost all grip styles, and I find it to be very comfortable for a fingertip grip. This, paired with the smooth coating, has made it my go-to option for both single player and multiplayer games. Its 63-gram weight isn't as impressive now in 2023, but there's a reason so many pro players use it. But to be honest, I think just how light your mouse is way overhyped, because I can do just as good on heavier mice without noticing a difference after just a couple of hours. So if you're buying a mouse to get better at games, all that actually matters is that it's going to stay comfortable through the hundreds of hours you'll inevitably need to play. Now, when you're in game with the Superlight, the on-rod switches feel pretty good to click in, though they're nowhere near the level as Razer's optical switches. Those are the reason the Viper V2 Pro had to be next on this list. They have an incredibly satisfying amount of feedback, and paired with the texture the mouse buttons have, gripping it while sniping is so much fun. That said, there's a lot of pre and post travel, which is mostly noticeable if you're pressing on the edges of the buttons. It definitely feels like you have to put a lot more pressure down, so you might want to rest your fingers more towards the center of the mouse button. It has a symmetrical shape but is less rounded like the Superlight, so fingertipping it is a little less comfortable when playing for more than a couple of hours at a time. It's also a lot shorter without having the big hump at the back, so the flatter shape does feel awkward when I first come back to it. At 58 grams, there's no noticeable weight difference between this and the Superlight, but the stock feet are far better and make it glide a lot smoother. For that reason, if I'm playing a game like COD or Apex, I do prefer using the Viper, just because connecting shots to moving targets feels a little easier. The 2 side buttons are nice for quick access to things like throwing frags, and this is something a lot of mice tend to get wrong. On the Superlight, the buttons are really mushy, but these actually have a little bit of tactile feedback to them. Next up is the Pulsar X2. Here I'm using the medium version, and I covered this mouse earlier in the year and felt that it was a really strong Superlight competitor. It has a very similar shape, just a little shorter, and at 56 grams it actually feels quite a bit lighter. It's also just $95 compared to $159, so while there are some trade-offs, I still find it to be a compelling option. The stock feet are quite smooth dragging it around, which for me makes it a great option for any tracking-based game. The shape of the X2 does make the mouse buttons sit pretty far down, so it is an adjustment coming from most other mice, definitely the Superlight. But once you're used to it, the switches feel pretty solid. I did actually have issues with my original unit, where after about a month of use, the buttons started to squeak, and after looking this up, it did seem to be an issue other people were having. I haven't had any problems on this one, but it's still something to look out for. Flipping the mouse over, the bottom shell is cut open, which I think looks sick, but also does help to shed off some of the weight. Also down here is a separate power switch and DPI button. This is much appreciated, as the Superlight doesn't have a DPI button at all, and on the Viper, both of those functions are combined into one single button. Next up on the list, also from Pulsar, is their Xlite V2 and V2 Mini, which is their take on an ergo mouse. I think they did a great job, and I've really enjoyed using both of these mice. I don't typically use the mini versions of mice as I have larger hands, but this one is actually a lot of fun to fingertip with. The shape is nice because there's plenty of room to rest my thumb on the side, and it fits in the rest of my hand very nicely. Like the X2, both have the cutouts at the bottom, but also some on the back hump. I personally don't mind the look, and once you're actually gaming, you're not going to notice it. The medium size weighs in at just 63 grams, and the mini only slightly lighter at 59 grams. While not the lightest on this list, they're both still mice I'm more than comfortable playing FPS games with. I've had these Superglide glass skates on the medium for a few months now, and they make it glide super nicely. There is a break-in and adjustment period to them, but they didn't make as drastic of a difference as I expected. The first few days were definitely the worst because it's really hard to track enemies in close quarters. Any small micro adjustment you would make is picked up by this sensor, so the sensitivity is something you have to get used to. When I first put these glass skates on, if you were to place the mouse just on the desk, you would see the cursor start to float away, and now after they've been broken in, scratched up a bit, it doesn't really happen, but trying to grab onto tabs or just like tiny little buttons in your browser, it is still a little bit of a challenge. That said, if you're willing to suck for a little bit, these super glides are actually really nice because paired with an already lightweight mouse, quick flicks do feel even more responsive. The switches in here are okay, but with the mouse buttons not being separated from the back of the mouse, higher up clicks feel a lot heavier. If you use a claw grip style, you're definitely going to want to look out for this. And now the last mouse on the list is the Razer Basilisk V3 Pro. I've used this one the least out of any of the other mice, but it's been on my radar for a while and I wanted to check it out, mainly because of its shape, as it's very similar to the MX Master. It is heavy, weighing 113 grams on my scale, which might turn a lot of people off, but there is something about a mouse like this that I love. I can see this becoming my main for single player games and any work I do on my PC, just because it is so comfortable. I personally wouldn't recommend it if you're mainly playing competitive games though, because it is a lot harder to make quick adjustments. I tried it a decent amount in Modern Warfare and it still feels a little bit awkward, though sniping is the one super satisfying thing. The weight does help a little bit to be more precise and make those very small adjustments. This is the only mouse on the list to feature RGB lighting, and aside from the Superlight, also have a slot for the USB dongle underneath. This is such a simple feature that most mice don't have these days, so I love to have it, especially as I do switch which mouse I'm using quite often. So that just about wraps up the video. These are the 5 mice that I've been playing the most with recently and think are worth checking out. Though I think we're at a point in the market, and we've been here for a while, where at literally every price range, there's just an endless amount of options that are really good. And it's part of the reason I'm not really going to be covering mouse much more on this channel. I also just don't find it all that fun anymore. But all that really matters is that any mouse you choose is comfortable enough to play for the endless amount of hours you need to get good. So with that said, I've been Cole, and I appreciate you guys for watching. I'll see you all in the next video, which will be 2 weeks from now. I'm trying to finally get on a consistent upload schedule. I've been really shitty with that the last year, so I'm trying to fix that. Appreciate you guys for watching, and take care.